All right. I'm so glad you are here. Welcome to It Is Alive on Wednesday. So glad you're here. I should have a guest, but it is day one of a snow emergency where I am. So that I have not heard from my guest is not a shock, and it's okay. We've got lots of fun stuff to talk about, including a topic I was going to cover in a few weeks that I think is important for folks to hear if they have concerns about medications they might not have access to soon or that might become unaffordable over time, given the changes that we're seeing in the US government right now. But first, let's talk about some fun stuff. Ooh, and noisy neighbors upstairs. Let's have some fun. So, we do have some exciting stuff coming up on the schedule. There is this Saturday, the 8th of March, 2025, a Chaos Magic 101 class. This is a by donation class being taught by Raven Wolf. You may have had a tarot reading from him here. He is delightful, really good at presenting information, and really good also at working with people to form a consensus and kind of get everybody's input and ideas in a class. And this Chaos Magic class is a perfect place to experience that kind of teaching style. It is a by donation class, as I said, so just come with some spare cash that you think is appropriate, and we'll go from there. It's okay. You can figure out what you can afford and what you think it's worth. Before that, on Saturday, of course, is the Standing Stones, and I've got their schedule. What are they doing this weekend? What is coming up on the 8th? Okay, March 8th. Energy manipulation and psychometry is what the arrows say here. The original schedule said ritual basics, and they've already done it. So energy manipulation and psychometry, looking forward to it. Always a good class. Raven Wolf loves attending, for example. So those will be fun. Tarot Lab is on the 9th, the following Sunday. That's with Nancy Antonucci. This is another by donation class. This one is for tarot. Herbalism year 2, of course, is tonight. If you're interested in the year 1 program, you're interested in starting that process, it'll pick up again in September. Right now, we are about 2/3 of the way through each of the 3 years of the program. You don't want to step in now. Anyway, Standing Stones will be here this Saturday, the following Saturday, and then the 29th. We're thinking maybe about a little spring celebration on the 22nd, just for fun. I know lots of folks will be at Paganicon, but if you need a break, clear your head a little, come on up here, have dinner at Momo Sushi's or Maya or any of the other restaurants in the immediate area, and stop in and say hi. It'll be fun. Aura Photography will be available here on that Saturday, the 22nd. If you are ready for Reiki 1, the person who was meant to be my guest today is looking at taking over my Reiki courses, which I'm excited for. I love teaching Reiki. I love doing Reiki. But I also love it when someone else gets to be an expert too. So I'm excited for Mary to come in and start teaching those classes. So sign up if you're ready. Palmistry will be Sunday the 25th. That's another by donation class. Lots of fun. Chris is so well informed about palmistry from multiple disciplines, multiple cultures. He's really done a lifelong in-depth study, and you're going to get your palm read while you're there because you're at the class. It's just a good time. So stop by if you can. There'll be a Reiki share on the last Sunday of the month at noon. So if you got your Reiki 1, 2, and or 3, come on by. We can trade a little Reiki energy and just feel better overall. We do have these broadcasts, and I'm starting to get them up online outside of our live category. So you'll see more and more of them in pop-ups, in shorts, things like that. It's fun. But do check us out on all our social medias where you're watching here, just in case you're not aware of the other one, Facebook, YouTube. We do TikTok, Blue Sky, and Instagram. So always a good time, always fun there. Stuff. What is happening in the wonderful world of stuff here? Well, we got in our weekly book order late last week. You might remember the interview we did here with Tony Rea, that when he and I sat down and chatted. So his book is back in stock, at least for the moment. I did get some really good new releases in ceremonial magic, some in-depth works. They've sold, and I'll get more in quickly. So if you're looking for those newer ones, they'll come back. I order every week, so that's no worries. I also got in late on Monday, I got these beautiful lapis palm stones. Isn't that gorgeous? I kind of love these. I love the contrast there. And I got them because someone I knew would definitely buy one asked me to get them in. So I got, by weight, I got a certain amount in. I got 9 of them in by weight, and she was going to come in and buy one. So I emailed her yesterday, said, hey, they came in late the day before. Come on in and you can have your first pick of what's here. She bought 8. I have 1. She was anticipating buying just 1, but she fell in love and she got 8 of them. These are $27.95 if you're interested. Who knows when those prices are going up thanks to the tariffs. So keep it in mind if you love it. I also got in a whole slew of herbs from Frontier, but as long as I was getting herbs, I re-upped us on the wonderful baths that we offer here. So foam baths are back, fully, all of them. There's a tangerine and grapefruit one, including the ones for the kids. So the koala, the duck, and the dolphin are back. And the mineral baths are back as well. So you can check those out. And right by the mineral baths on the same part of the same display, I have a local maker with the Life of Luxury and the Love Thyself ritual bath salts. These are lovely as well. So I'd recommend these too. Take a look. Yes, they're a little more, but they're also a small local maker who's just getting started in the last few years. So come check them out when you get a chance. They are fun. Other things that have been popular and going fast right now are the Yin Yang Stone Duo. So this has got a stick of selenite and it's got some tektite. So you've got that balance immediately with the collection itself. These have gone super fast. If you really love that idea, come grab one would be my honest advice. And the other one that's taking off is this little herb spell jar. So these are all about abundance. So these are all little abundance spell jars. They've got a little charm on them. They come in a little bag. And then you've got the herbs that are actually in the jar itself for your spell work. The bag, once you get it out of the bag, you can use this bag to enhance this. Grab some stones that are also prosperity stones. Green aventurine comes to mind, citrine comes to mind, and you can put them in the bag and keep them together, and now you've got double action. So another great product, actually from the same folks with the baths and the duo stones. And the other one I'll bring up, just because it's always been popular, is the Pisces Witch, Minnesota's own Florida water maker. She is a delight and a joy. These come down from central Minnesota. We were out for a bit because she got sick and she would not put that energy into her products. So we had to wait, but we waited patiently and we have been rewarded. She also brought some sage spray. So if you want to use sage to cleanse your space, but you don't want to smudge, or you don't want to use it as an incense, it comes in liquid form. Always a popular one for us. So I highly recommend you check them out when you can. Of course, we've got, weekly book orders coming in. Fred Souls came in as well this past week. Those come in every week, every other week, something like that. So do check all those things out. The topic I want to cover today, since we're not going to talk about Reiki with the new Reiki teacher that I am so excited for. Hi, Mary. We'll see you soon when the weather clears up. There was a topic that I booked for myself to talk about at the end of the month. That topic came to me as I drove into work listening to people on Minnesota Public Radio talking about fearing the inability to access medications that they rely on to lead a happy, healthy life. Now, this centered on the trans community. This centered on people who are taking medications to suppress some hormones and or enhance others. But this holds true for diabetics who need their insulin to survive. And listen to a radio story a few days later on AM 950 about someone whose insulin had gone from $5 a month, thanks to the Biden administration, to now $80 a month. And it impacts whether or not they can afford to stay alive. And I know in all of these populations, all of these people who genuinely need these medications, there are going to be some people who will turn to herbs as a way of extending the medications that they have or substituting for medications. And I want to give some practical advice. I can't stop you from doing that. I'm not going to push you to do it either. It's a personal choice you have to make for yourself. But if you're going to go down that road, there are a few things I think you should know. First and foremost, you're going to want to start asking some questions when you buy these herbs. Questions that the average person helping you across the counter are going to find harder to answer and awkward because they just don't get asked those questions. So grant them a little grace and be a little patient when you ask, I need to know the lot number for this herb that I'm purchasing today. And if it's not the first time you've purchased it, you want to know they haven't switched suppliers and that it's the same lot number that you got last time. I understand if they don't want to tell you their specific supplier, but telling you the lot number isn't going to give anything away. So ask. The reason I need you to ask that, if you're going to try using herbs in part or in whole in lieu of any of these medications that might become difficult, if not impossible to get, or outpriced for you, is because this is much closer to buying a bottle of wine than it is buying a pill. Every harvest from every location is going to have its own level of chemistry. You're going after one, maybe two particular chemicals that are naturally within the plants that you're buying, and that's great. But there's no guarantee from harvest to harvest, and I mean from year to year, and I mean from location to location, that the ratio of the chemistry you're after and the levels of the chemistry you're after are going to be consistent. In fact, I can guarantee you they won't be. And the reason you want to check to make sure it's the same supplier as the last time you purchased, at the very least, is because when I go to order herbs for our shop, for people's mojo bags and their poppets and the other ways people tend to use herbs from us, I open a multitude of potential suppliers because it's all sold at market rate. And each company's rate changes every time they purchase from one of their suppliers. So I go to my little wholesale suppliers or my little distributors, because sometimes we need to go to a distributor instead of the wholesaler. In fact, we've been told for certain items, don't go through us, you need too much, go to our distributor. And we go then to their distributor, which is lovely. And some of the wholesale companies act as distributors as well as wholesale suppliers, and that's great too. But when I open all of those options, what I'm looking for is a company whose quality is at least reasonable and is giving me the lowest price this time. So there's never a guarantee that the herb I bought 3 months ago is coming from the same supplier when I'm ordering it today. And you need to know that it's coming from the same supplier and that it is in fact the same lot number. That matters. Because once you are used to a particular harvest, if you can stay with that harvest for a while, you will know what you're doing. You'll have a consistency that you won't get if you're randomly and unknowingly jumping from supplier to supplier. The other thing that matters with this is that if you do your research and you look up or come and see an herbalist like me, if you do your research though, and okay, there's all these herbs that can help me with whatever it is I'm trying to deal with. Every single one of those herbs that has like the chemical you're looking for, maybe you're looking for phytotestosterone, for example. And don't be intimidated by that phyto thing, by the way. I'm not talking about your pet's testosterone. It's not Fido. It's phyto, P-H-Y-T-O, testosterone. It's just a prefix that we stick onto the front of the word to say derived from a plant. If it was xeno, if it was X-E-N-O, it would mean derived from a lab, basically. So if you're looking, say, for phytotestosterone, it's present in varying levels in a number of different plants. Not tons, but you definitely have some range of choice. So which ones are the highest typically starts to matter, but not just that. What else is in the plant starts to matter too. And that's where it starts to get just a little tricky. You might respond really well to some of the other chemistry in one or two of those plants and develop a preference for those particular plants as your resource. Every one of these plants isn't one chemical. It's a complex combination of chemistry. And they all work together and they all impact how different chemicals in the plant work in your body. And because a lot of the chemistry that people are looking for when they're looking to replace some sort of medication or extend some sort of medication are not the things the plant makes to survive, but rather the thing the plant makes to thrive, that's especially subject to ups and downs of production. Okay, these are not the things that the plant needs for primary use. These are secondary things. These are really luxury items or middle class items the plant can produce for itself when it has the resources. So if it's growing and it's just in a great location, but it's just a very bad year, it's just not going to get the right amount of sun or the right amount of shade or the right amount of moisture, it's not going to have as much to devote to producing those thrive chemicals. They're called secondary metabolites, if you want the big fancy language for it. Primary metabolites, survival. Secondary metabolites, thriving. So secondary metabolites could be chemistry the plant makes. It's not making it for you. It's not making it for me. It's making it maybe as a defensive mechanism. So it's got maybe a sharper taste. It's making that chemistry to make itself more attractive to its pollinators, which might make it smell really good or might make it smell more like rotting meat. It really depends on what kind of pollinator it likes to use. Bloodroot sanguinaria grows here in this area. If you can find it in shaded locations, its flower grows along the ground and is roughly the color of raw meat. And it doesn't smell good because it's not trying to attract bees. It's trying to attract little things that want to eat carrion and crawl along the ground and will enter the flower. So those are the kinds of things that where the chemistry you're looking for is most likely coming from. And because of that, it's the most variable of the plant's chemistry, which is why you really need to keep track of where the herb's coming from and even its lot number. Just ask. They might not have it this time, but they can start tracking for it and get it for you. If I happen to be in the shop and you have questions about stuff you've gotten here, I can definitely find out for you, and I'm going to be the resource you're going to want to turn to. That said, there is one more catch, and this is one that I think for some people in some communities is just too big an ask. To understand how a single herb that might have the chemistry you're looking for in a way that you can metabolize and use readily, it works for you individually, you have to really tune into your system. You are going to have moments where you didn't get quite enough of what you were looking for, and everything is going to feel off or wrong or bad. And you have to cue into it. You can't push it aside. You can't ignore it, because what it's telling you perhaps is you need a little more this time, or you need a little more with this batch. For diabetics, for example, I've had diabetics who wanted to switch to as much natural as they can. They are always monitoring their blood sugars a little more than when they were on their medications. And again, I'm not encouraging you to do this. I'm not discouraging you to do this, but I do want you to be informed of some of the risks when you do this. You're going to want to make sure that the herbs you're interested in don't conflict with medications you are taking and already have. If they do the same thing in the same way, you want to be very sure you're not overdosing on the medication. And overdosing might feel fine, at least at first for some people. I'm thinking of diabetics in particular here, but it's going to wear your system down faster. You don't want more than you need. That's where this gets very, very tricky. And again, it's not that people haven't done this. People have done this. And you might find it necessary if you suddenly find you are cut off from your medication legally or financially, and this really is the best you can do. So I'm going to employ the idea of caution and possibly even finding someone to work with to help you figure out what's best for your body. And it might not be what's best for your neighbors or your friends. So say you're in a support group for your health issues, for why you're taking the medications you're taking, and you find that this herb works great. The person you sit next to in that support group might find that that herb kind of makes them headachy or a little nauseous. It just does not cut the mustard. It does not do the job for them. They might need a different herb that purportedly does many similar things to the herb you're taking. So that's the other piece of advice I will give. That you find something that works for you, please don't randomly and blindly recommend it to other people. You can say it worked for you, by all means, I'd encourage that. But I would also be aware that it really might not work for the very next person you speak to about it. It is one of the reasons that in herb shops, the FDA discourages giving medical information over the counter. And I will often tell my employees, don't, because that thing you took last week for that nasty cough you had worked great for you. And the person you're talking to over the counter has a nasty cough and they're asking for recommendations for a nasty cough. But what neither of you have sat down to realize is that your cough was a wet, gunky, mucus-laden, yucky cough that totally took over your life, and they have an incredibly dry, scratchy cough. And the herb you took, part of what it did was it resolved the wetness of that cough. It resolved the damp involved in the cough. And if you give them something that dries out dampness on your recommendation, and they already have a dry cough, you're going to make them feel much, much worse and perhaps not resolve the cough at all. Same holds true here, that it works for you, it might not work for your neighbor. That is true also with prescription medications. I, for example, and my one and only sibling and one of my parents can't digest opiates very well, really and truly. Like, I have skipped in a straight line on Dilaudid. I just, and barely got any pain relief out of it. Standard opiate medications do not work. And in fact, one has even made pain worse for me in one particular circumstance. This makes me an outlier. Yes, it does. I am not normal in not creating enough of the liver enzymes required to break down the opium so that I can use it for pain relief. But that's what's going on with herbs and medications. You are using enzymes in your liver, and that's the old word for it. Cytochromes we're drilling down now to what we're calling cytochromes. If you don't make enough of a particular one, you may or may not be able to use the medication anyway, whether it's from nature or from labs and well researched. Some herbs are very well researched, and you can look up that research online, and I'd encourage you to do so before you get anywhere near any of them. But know that your experience can vary from batch of herb to batch of herb, and your experience might not be comparable to someone else whose diagnosis is ostensibly the same as yours, or whose medical issue looks on paper just like yours. So keep all those things in mind if you decide you want to put your toe into the herbal world because you're concerned about losing access to medication. And if it is a decision you're going to make anyway, despite anything I say, pro or con, start now. Start while you still have access. Figure out, when you still have everything you need for something to fall back on, what you need to do in an emergency if one occurs sometime this year or in the next 4 years. I hope this helps. Anyone out there who's interested in the subject, anyone out there who is already being impacted with medications what is that? Going from $5 to $80, increasing in price. That's a 16-fold increase. If I'm doing my, back of the paper bag math right, that's huge. That can push that medication out of affordability, or can push somebody into a state where they're choosing between all the food they need for the day or some of the food they need for the day and their medication. Having enough clothing, replacing that worn out pair of shoes that you're starting to walk on dirt with versus having the medication. And while that's the case, even if all it is that you're worried about losing your access, start looking now, start talking to experts now. And by experts, I don't necessarily mean your physician. Your physician is not trained in this stuff. Find people with good training in this stuff. Find local resources that are good. By all means, talk to your doctor about your concerns. Please talk to your doctor about your concerns. If you do make plans to try to substitute any part of your medication in whole or in part with something natural because you're concerned about access, tell your doctor, tell your prescribing physician what you're planning on doing, why you're planning on doing it, and they will support you or they will object. It will depend on their medical philosophy, their thought process, their concerns about your own safety, and understand that can be a big motivator for those folks. And that's a valid concern. You're going to make the decision you're going to make, no matter what I say, no matter what they say. I'm asking you to do it being as upfront as possible with the people who help you take care of your health. And I am asking you to do it as safely as possible going forward, knowing that you will be checking in with yourself, whether it's by general feel, with blood tests, like blood glucose tests, whatever the issues are. You're going to be checking in more often with yourself, and you're going to have to make adjustments more often because of the fact that herbs are not lab processed and they haven't been processed to the isolation of one particular chemical for the most part. I'm starting to see that happen in the herbal industry, and it will come. The catch with those is that while absolutely those other chemicals that are not part of your focus for why you're using the herb can affect how you use the herb and how the chemistry you want is going to affect your body, it can enhance the effects as well as take away the effects. Just to give you an example, this is the easiest example, it's the one I always use first. One of the plants that aspirin was first isolated from, salicylic acid was first isolated from, was white willow bark. There have been some very small scale studies done, and when I say small scale, I mean a few hundred people rather than a few thousand people. Small scale studies, not studies I would necessarily generalize from yet, but studies in which people with aspirin sensitivities, people who could not take aspirin because it upset their stomachs, were asked to try white willow bark. And the results were interesting in that a large number of those people could tolerate white willow bark tea or other preparations that used the whole plant, where they couldn't tolerate salicylic acid or aspirin isolated and on its own. So it turns out that unimportant companion chemistry is vital for some people if they're going to make good use of aspirin. Again, not generalizable results, not large enough scaled studies that I've seen yet. There may be some out there I have missed. I'm happy for somebody to let me know in the comments if that's the case. But it can really matter, both for good and for ill, what that companion chemistry is and how you relate to it and how the chemicals you're after relate to it as well. So always remember, a plant is not one thing, it's many complex things. And that is why you'll find that your pick-me-up herb might not be mine. Like, you might love coffee because caffeine is really where it's at for you. But given a fair playing field, you might find you also respond incredibly well to theobromine, in which case you might prefer hot chocolate or tea to coffee because it works better and your body likes the chemistry better. So you develop a taste for it that leads you to preferring it over the coffee, or vice versa. You really don't respond to theobromine. You don't care. Physiologically, your body just does not care about theobromine, doesn't know what to do with it, completely ignores it, and caffeine is really where it's at which point the higher caffeine in coffee might be where you really want to be. It's a nice, mundane way of looking at it. Tea has 3 pick-me-ups. I've named 2 of them. Theophylline is the other one. Yerba mate has 2. It's got the caffeine and it's got one of the other 2. Chocolate has some of the others as well as a little caffeine. So how your body responds to each of those 3 chemicals as pick-me-ups, if you give all of those beverages a fair shot, will affect which one you land on ultimately as your best pick-me-up. Not that I'm necessarily recommending caffeine. You might be avoiding caffeine, and that's great. You know why? Because there are other pick-me-ups. And you can find some other way of getting there. And that is also the beauty and the strength of herbs. If one herb does not work well for you, there may be another one that is much more ideally suited to the specifics of your physiology. So if you're going to go in this direction, please be safe. Please be cautious. Please find an expert that can help you with this specifically. And please be upfront with your physician if you can at all. Please be safe. Please stay alive. And know that you're wonderful as you are. I'll see you guys next time. Blessed be.